Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Joe Lombardo. I'm the editor of the Logistic magazine, and I welcome you to this special interview today with Professor Dr. Marco Tieman, who is the author of the latest book, The Halal Business Management, A Guide to Achieving Halal Excellence. Marco, welcome to this interview. It's a pleasure to have you. And again, congratulations on your achievement. I know you've been working on this book for many years, and a lot of research has gone into it. And now we can discuss a little bit about your achievement.
Thank you, Joe. It's a great honor to be here at this Logistic platform. Well, a great pleasure talking to you on this important topic, I think, Halal Business Management.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've encountered many challenges on this journey, not least with various mindset thinking and looking at how people look at halal supply chain, maybe in a very different way. And what you've done, you've broken down your book into four main segments, which I would like to explore with you: the halal certification, halal supply chain management, halal branding and marketing, and the halal risk and reputation management. So if I could kick off with that, is with the first question on certification. What was the stimulus for the certification in your view?
It is about earning your license to operate. So if you are doing business in a Muslim world, selling to Muslim countries, it's important to export to Europe. You have to comply with a lot of regulations. So for the Muslim world, this is halal certification.
Okay. So, and what were the challenges in changing the mindset on this journey? Because clearly, certification of such a nature is not normal for everybody. It's quite a specialist approach.
Yeah, well, it started quite some time ago. So in '74, the Malaysian government issued a letter to confirm that certain products were halal. In '94, the Malaysian government issued the first halal certificate. And in 2002, since 2002, the Malaysian government had set up a halal certification body. Around that time, also Indonesia set up a halal certification body, Majelis Ulama Indonesia. And the idea was that it started here in Asia, in fact, halal certification, where, Asia is a whole melting pot of different cultures. So it was for Muslims important that they could trust halal. What you see now, also over the past 5 years, also in the Middle East, that awareness has been growing, the importance of halal certification. Earlier they said, well, everybody is Muslim, what is the halal issue? But they have been recognizing that most Muslim countries, including in the Middle East, they are dependent on imports from non-Muslim countries. And so the awareness is there that it's important to control the halal integrity of food, but also non-food products.
Okay, that's a very, very interesting point. But food contamination across the whole spectrum is an important aspect. Our food chain is always at risk, vulnerable. Is the halal certification of a different standard, high standard, or is it the same as a normal food supply chain? How would you describe that?
It's an important point you're raising. So your basis of halal is still quality management. So your quality management system, in food safety, we have HACCP or ISO. So the quality management system is still the basis of your of halal. So the halal assurance system sits on top of the quality management system. So halal does not exist without quality. So it's important to realize. However, halal looks particular on the Islamic aspect. Is it lawful for Muslims to consume, which is certified by independent halal certification body. So halal doesn't exist without quality management, so it needs to be there. And in fact, the halal assurance system is referring to existing processes in quality management. So they are built on top of each other and very dependent. So
they're complementary. So there's the quality, the food quality is the basis, the foundation across all of the food chain, and the halal sits on top of this and is a complementary aspect.
Yeah, and the beauty of that is that it's controlled by another party. So if you have products that have a quality management system such as HACCP and are halal certified, these are two checks.
Right.
So two different bodies have assessed the product. So if a product is halal certified, it has an additional check. So that's why it is very popular also for non-Muslims to buy halal products, because they know the quality is assured there.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Marco, let's go to the next cluster of topic of your book, the halal supply chain management. Now, clearly, food supply chain security and safety are ever-growing important topics, especially in a disrupted world. Where does the halal supply chain differ in terms of safety and security, apart from the certification? Is there something over and above our standard system, or is it just falls within the network?
Yeah. So that was also part of my PhD research. I did my PhD on halal supply chain management, which I started in 2006. So I was looking into the aspect of the halal supply chain. So how is that different? So what I addressed, halal supply chain, it consists of three important components. So the first component is cross-contamination, okay, which is contamination of something non-halal with a product that is halal. So that the traditional approach, also a traditional supply chain, addresses that by proper packaging. You can avoid cross-contamination by proper primary packaging on products. But so that is the same, but there are two more components which are important in halal supply chain. So another component is risk of contamination. And risk of contamination is addressed by physically segregating halal from non-halal products, as well as communication. So with halal supply chains, you look at segregation. So don't mix halal and non-halal on the same pallet or load carriers. If it's going to a Muslim destination country, it's halal only in transport. So in a container or truck is halal only. And the communication, so on freight documents as a label on halal products, and maybe even on a designated halal container, you put a halal code on it. And the international halal code is halal supply chain. So that is to communicate the halal status in a supply chain. Okay. Another area where halal is different is perception. And perception is a difficult element because Islam, you have different Islamic schools of thought. You have also different fatwas, which are religious rulings, as well as local customs. So here in Southeast Asia, we have Indonesia, we have Malaysia and Brunei. These are all neighboring countries. They are all under the same Shafi'i school of thought. However, they still have different practices in terms of slaughtering, for example. So Brunei wants to have only hand slaughter, no stunning. Malaysia allows certain types of stunning. Indonesia, until now, has been okay also with machine slaughter. So Brunei doesn't want to mix their halal with the Malaysian or the Indonesian halal. Right. Ritual cleansing is something which is important in logistics. If you want to do cleaning of sea containers or transport. So that is relevant only in Southeast Asia, where they practice the Shafi'i school of thought. Whereas in Africa or the Middle East, they don't practice ritual cleansing. So when you're dealing with halal supply chains, you have to understand that the requirements of the destination country where your supply chains are serving. So your supply chain to Brunei will be different from a supply chain to the Middle East or to a non-Muslim country.
It sounds very, very intricate and very complex. So you talk about, in the book, you talk about advice and guidance. Is there a codified legislation to handle halal supply chain practices now, looking at what you've just described in terms of the origin and destination practices, or is it still based on informal type of rulings?
Well, I was very privileged to be part of IHI Alliance, which was a program to develop an international halal standards under the Islamic Chamber of Commerce and Industry from Saudi Arabia. So in 2008, which was launched in 2010, we developed an international halal logistics standard, which I chaired, which has been implemented also by logistics service providers, multinational logistics service providers, and being used. That was an international standard. Currently, in Turkey, under SMIC organization, they have an initiative which is part of the OIC, an Organization of Islamic Cooperation. They've started a new initiative to create the halal supply chain standard and the TC10. So the code is TC10. So they're working on an international halal supply chain standard, which has 3 modules: transportation, warehouse, and retailing. But that standard is not available yet. And the chair of the TC10 is by the Malaysian government. So in Malaysia, we have already a halal supply chain standard, more than 10 years, which has the same modules: transport, warehouse, retail. So it is likely that the TC10 standard will be quite similar to the Malaysian halal standard. However, the Malaysian halal standard is a management standard. It's not a prescriptive standard. So it doesn't identify what can I put together in transport. Does it need to be a halal only warehouse? So those decisions have not been made in the Malaysian standard. So my concern is exactly what you're saying, is that there will not be very clear guidelines on how to organize a halal supply chain, also probably in the TC10.
And who's working on this convergence on the standards? Is there somebody that's taking the lead? Is Malaysia taking the lead? Or now, if Turkey is looking to codify it for international application, will they take the lead? Because clearly, when we come to talk about the compliance and governance to manage the halal supply chain, there's got to be some understanding how you're going to manage both the compliance, but also the governance in terms of regulation. How is that going to be handled? Is that still very challenging?
So that is quite complex. So SMIC has been appointed under the OIC, Organization of Islamic Cooperation, have been appointed to manage this. So Malaysia said, okay, we will help you to do one of the components, which is supply chain. There are also other groups, committees. So one is there on food, another one on cosmetics, pharma, and on slaughtering. So the many committees has been formed. So Malaysia is chairing the supply chain standard in the TC10. The enforcement will be locally. So if everybody agrees to use TC10 for supply chain, then the enforcement will be done in Malaysia by the Malaysian authority, in Indonesia by the Indonesian authority, in Singapore by the Singapore authority. So that can be done local. But still the question is, will there be prescriptive guidelines, or is it up to the individual company to interpret that? So it is not being said that it is clear from the standard that how to do it. So it's still important for companies, if they want to organize a halal supply chain, to develop, I call that the halal supply chain blueprint, how you organize your supply chain, and also create standard operating procedures, halal SOPs, and put them in contracts with your supply chain partner. So the brand owner is responsible to develop a halal supply chain blueprint. They should determine what are the SOPs in transportation and storage. And they have to put those into the contract with the distributor, with a logistics service provider, with their suppliers, and so on.
Okay, so we'll have to read the book in a bit more detail to understand all this intricacy. You mentioned a lot of countries in Asia, and you mentioned Turkey, but what about other big countries like Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Jordan, Syria? Are they participating in this supply chain, halal supply chain initiative?
Yeah, so you have committees in the SMIC. So SMIC is leading, so Malaysia is leading the committee TC10 for halal supply chain systems. But there are different members in there from OIC countries. So the member countries from OIC are the Islamic country, Muslim majority countries. So if you are a member of the OIC, you can also be part of that committee. And there are different nationalities that are involved in different countries. Leading this one.
Okay, good. So let's now go towards halal branding and marketing. Clearly, you mentioned this in your book, and basically, it's about the branding and about the investments and about the image. So when we normally talk about consumer branding and marketing, these are normally options. But why is supply chain categorized in the same way? Because it seems to be more of a mandatory standard rather than an optional standard, right?
Yeah, that's a good one. So you have, on the one side, you have typical halal brands, and halal brands I would clarify or describe as brands that are clearly positioned, signaled, and communicated to be aligned with the values, norms, and ideas of the Muslim faith. So they target the Muslim consumer. On the other hand, you have so-called halal products, I call that in my book, where they just ensure the halal compliance with the product and also the supply chain and possibly even the value chain. So a halal brand is Al Marai, for example, from Saudi Arabia, McDonald's in Malaysia, Nestle in Malaysia, and the cosmetic company Wardah in Indonesia. So they are positioned as a halal brand. On the other hand, you have halal products like Unilever, L'Oreal, Emirates, Indo Foods. They are more, we are halal compliant products.
You touched a very good point there, Marco, because we always associate the halal supply chain with food, but you touched on things like cosmetics and other non-food type products, which are also quite surprising in the halal supply chain. And therefore, it seems to be a much wider supply chain covering different products rather than just food. How big is the supply chain going to be? I mean, if you talk about food plus cosmetics plus other personal, could be soaps. Are soaps halal, for example? Could soaps be halal as well?
Yeah, so halal started with meat, then it went to food, broad, right. And now we have cosmetics, pharmaceuticals. I thought I was a halal expert, but I'm still surprised every year because a new product they managed to get halal certified. Yeah. So I've seen fashion halal certified. I've seen certified cat food. I've seen certified toilet paper and even fridges. Wow. So it's a multi-trillion industry, fast growing in certain areas, even double digit. So it's a fast growing industry, and it's good to recognize that halal standards. So if a brand owner certifies its product halal, the standard in Malaysia, Indonesia, and also other countries, it already specifies that in the storage and transport, the products, the halal products, need to be segregated from non-halal products already in the supply chain. It's already part of the standard. It is mandatory. However, the enforcement until today, they didn't go into the entire supply chain, but technically, already the brand owners need to comply. As there was little enforcement, not all the brand owners addressed their supply chain. But my expectation is that within a couple of years, probably within 5 years, that the leading halal certification bodies make halal logistics mandatory, in particular for Muslim majority countries.
Right. So having said that, Marco, is there some tendency now, some pressure towards boycotting non-branded halal supply chain? I mean, what is really happening in the market now as we are transitioning into a more structured, more codified, mandatory supply chain?
Well, I talk about the B word, the dangerous B word, the boycotts. So there is not such a thing as a kind of hallmark for halal supply chain. The main rationale for brand owners and the drivers of this will be mainly the big international brands. It's about protecting your license to operate. It's about risk management. So that is the main rationale to go for halal certification and also to address halal throughout your supply chain. Those big brand owners are halal certified and they cannot afford to lose the license to operate, to lose the halal certificate. And what over the past 10 years, what has been shown that companies that lost the halal cert for whatever reason, they had very big damages in terms of sales and also in terms of reputation damages. So it's important to be proactive regarding halal and to take a product approach towards halal instead of a supply chain approach is very dangerous because the standard says already you have to segregate in transportation and storage. So why are you exposing yourself as a company? Because when there are new enforcements or new fatwas, religious rulings, a brand owner gets a letter and said, well, this is our new understanding of halal by our halal certification body. You are certified by this halal authority, so if you want to keep your halal cert, please change it, and preferably overnight, immediately. Okay. So if you are a big brand owner with complex supply chains, to make changes overnight to your supply chain are very difficult to do. Sure. So therefore, big brand owners with complex supply chains cannot risk They cannot risk this to be just following the existing regulation. It's too risky.
Okay.
So they have to
That's
be.
great. Yeah, that now takes us into that area of the halal risk and reputation management, and you touched quite a lot of that. But coming back to the certification then, I presume the certification is issued by the origin authorities, correct?
So if you want, like if you're Nestle, you certify.
Manufacturing Malaysia, I would be certified by Malaysia. But isn't there now also a possibility that the receiving destination will have a different certification, in which case there could be some conflict? Is that possibly another area of risk and reputation that supply chain people or manufacturers need to be aware of?
Yeah, exactly. You're hitting it on the nail. How to say? That's important. So, for example, you have a factory in Malaysia that manufactures for Malaysia, but also for Indonesia. Right. So brand owners, they have done two certificates. So they certify in the Malaysian standard, but also in the Indonesian standard. So they have two standards.
Right. So a company exporting from Malaysia to other countries, like again, I touch Egypt, Morocco, Algeria, they might have to have 5 different standards then in this case, the country of origin and the country of destination. So it's a very complex issues, and clearly the risks are multiplied, and the issues are quite big. So how do you manage the cost of this type of operation? Because clearly every certification has a cost to get certified, to sustain, to change the packaging, to maybe relabel, etc. Where is the cost and the effort required to sustain such a supply chain?
I think there are two things. So the cost and the effort. So in terms of cost, we talk about opportunity cost for not complying. Okay. So it's the same like cool chains, right? If there's a breakage in the cool chain, you have very high cost. So why are companies investing in cool chain excellence? To make sure there's no breakage. So the same you have to look at halal. So losing your license to operate by big brand owners in the food or cosmetic space, you cannot afford. So it's about protecting your halal cert, protecting your license to operate, protecting your corporate reputation. So that is the investment. So what is the effort required? Well, you need to create a halal supply chain blueprint, first of all. And next to your halal assurance system, which is important for certification, you also should develop a solid risk mitigation and communication plan to address halal issues in your supply chain, but also address in terms of a crisis, so a risk recovery and communication plan. So in case there's a crisis, that you also know what to do. So you need to be prepared and also create blueprints to protect your halal integrity and protect your brand in terms of crisis.
Right. Okay, well, that was a very interesting question, a fascinating subject. So to conclude on this discussion, Marco, and I don't want to spoil the elements of your reading the book, whilst we can see that Muslim countries are embracing this model and it's becoming a requirement to do business in Muslim countries, how complex is it for Western countries to apply and adopt these standards? Because clearly Western countries have big Muslim communities, and the Muslim communities are also demanding halal supply chain or halal certified products. How is that evolving in the Western world?
Yeah, so in my research, I differentiate between supply chains to Muslim majority countries and supply chains to non-Muslim countries. So for non-Muslim countries, you will see in my book that supply chains are much easier. So they are less strict as compared to Muslim countries. So for example, if you're sending products to Indonesia or Malaysia, there has to be halal only in your container. If you're sending it to Singapore or to Holland, where I come from, and then you can mix halal also with certain non-halal products. So there are a lot of leniencies. And the reason is, so like in Holland, when I go and buy my milk in Holland, I don't see a halal cert on the milk in Holland, but those guys are also exporting all over the world their milk powders. And so in order to export to the Muslim world needs to be halal certified. So this factory is halal certified, but the brand owners choose not to show the halal logo in those non-Muslim countries. So there should be leniencies in halal supply chains in non-Muslim countries to make it workable. Because halal shouldn't be more expensive than other products. So efficiencies are very important in halal. And so it should be robust, effective, your halal supply chain, but halal supply chain should also be efficient. And not necessarily they should cost more. And by proper designing it, from my perspective, I've always been saying that halal supply chain should not be more expensive than conventional supply chain. So the trick is how best to design those halal supply chains. So that is key.
So I presume there are specialist logistics service providers emerging to handle this, specialist supply chain practitioners, and also presumably also carriers in terms of handling the containers and the packaging and all that's necessary to comply with certification.
Yeah, so there are more companies that are getting halal certified. So until about 7 years ago, it was mainly local players in the market. But now you see the last 5 years, you see the multinational logistics companies also to get halal certified. Right. So that's interesting. Now the multinationals are also in the game. And we talk about DB Schenker, DHL, some Japanese carriers, they're halal certified. CMA, CGM was offering also for Malaysia some halal cleaning services for sea containers. So you see now that the international players are getting into the game. So I think a very important topic to look into for logistics operators is halal logistics, because it's such a big market. And what you see, it's not only that halal is relevant for Muslim countries, but like countries like Thailand and Vietnam, these are big exporters to Muslim countries. So the supply chain start there. So also in those countries, you need to address the supply chain properly.
Marco, it's been a very fascinating discussion. I really have learned quite a lot from these few moments that we've been talking. So the Halal Business Management, a guide to achieving halal excellence, is just more than meets the eye. There's a lot more packed into that book that we can imagine. Marco, thank you very much for spending the time with us. Really appreciate it. And again, congratulations on this new book. And I hope there will be a sequel to this with some updated developments in the industry.
Yes, thank you so much, Joe. It was a great pleasure meeting you, and look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you very much, Marco. All the very best to you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.